Hello, hello. I guess we'll wait a few minutes before we actually get the conversation started, but good evening. Um, we have been trying for the past couple of weeks since our Iran video came out to schedule a panel discussion on Iran war updates, which has not been quite as easy as I expected because, first of all, panel discussion with people who are more qualified than me, and it's been hard to get everyone's schedules to line up. And secondly, we're kind of always waiting for the other shoe to drop. It feels at the moment like any day could either be Trump declaring victory and removing everything from the region, or Trump starting to bomb the country again. And it feels like doing a live stream about what's happening when we don't really know. Maybe we're going to do a stream and the next day the situation is going to be completely different. So right now we're kind of waiting for something to happen and then we'll do another stream about that. But today is, among other things, Star Wars Day. And in honor of that, in honor of May the 4th, we are going to have a panel discussion to talk about kind of, I think, unquestionably the best thing to come out of the Star Wars franchise forever. Can I say forever, or at least in recent years of the Disney era? I think it's not even controversial to say that. For me personally, it's definitely my favorite Star Wars property ever, which is Andor, and I think that's a fitting way to celebrate Star Wars Day this year because of how perfectly resonant it is with the moment. So joining us for the stream today, we have friend of the channel Hunter Rota, and his Lego Star Wars droid. Is that actually a Star Wars droid, or is that another thing that you have on screen there? Oh yeah, it is. I haven't played it. Oh wait, shit. Your audio is not on. Now your audio is on. Sorry about that.
Also, are we meant to show up on camera? Because on the stream, I don't see us.
You should be on stream right now. Yeah, you should be on stream. I see you there.
Oh, maybe YouTube's just being weird. I was just trying to dual box to see what it looked like.
Stream. My bad. You are in the vertical stream. Let me fix that. Okay. Now that will work better. This layout is really fucked for the vertical stream. But in the horizontal stream, you've been on camera for a little while.
Gotcha.
Okay,
Confusion.
let me try to fix
Technology.
The layout for the
it's our enemy.
thing. Yeah, it's slightly annoying. Vertical layout is a bit of a pain in the ass. I need to fix that at some point. Maybe if I do, how about this? If I do this, and then I'm gonna move this to the left. That way, I kind of appear twice on camera, but the chat.
Why don't you disable yourself on Discord, like the image? And then it'll just show him and I.
But the horizontal layout is better if I'm enabled on Discord. So I have to choose between what works better in horizontal or vertical, basically right now. But I think this works fine. Okay, yeah, everyone is on now. So Hunter, friend of the channel, people who've been subscribing for a long time are familiar with you. And there's a new face here, which is Kevin. You've been featured in a couple of stories that we've collabed on Instagram lately. But I guess it's as good as a time as any to announce that you're the newest member of the Barely Informed team, and that we're working on some really cool reporting for proper YouTube videos coming very soon. Do you want to talk about what kind of work you do?
Yeah, I mean, is my audio okay? Just making sure.
Sounds good to me.
Cool.
Yeah,
sweet.
Go ahead. If there's a problem, chat will let me know, and I'll let you know.
All right. I mean, I kind of report on a range of things in the U.S., but it's obviously been a quite the year and a half or so of crazy stuff, and it's been a lot of frontline reporting for me, going to protests, tear gas, pepper balls, all the whole shebang. But I have been working on a lot of kind of more in-depth immigration related reporting. That's kind of what we're looking at. And then, yeah, I mean, I've had some work featured in Mother Jones talking about immigrants who have had severe impacts on their life with ICE taking their family members. And then, I'm working on a lot of stuff right now about the types of weapons that they're using on protesters. And yeah, so it's a lot of coverage of activism and the resistance movements against what we're seeing in the sort of fascist takeover of the country, and that never really seems to be slowing down. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because you just used the big F word, which, I mean, okay, everyone here is on the left, to varying degrees on the left, in the live stream, and generally barely informed audience is quite left leaning as well. Among normies, it can still be it can still raise eyebrows to use the F word, but
Yeah.
funnily enough, I've had off the record conversations with proper international law experts, NATO advisors, a bunch of very, very serious people in these spaces. And when I'm at this point, I don't think it's even debatable that this is fascism. And I've never had any pushback from anyone who knows what they're talking about on this.
Yeah.
They're never well, no, they're yeah, this is unironically just what we are seeing right now is what's been happening in every fascist takeover ever.
Yeah. It's okay, at what point do we do you want me to call it proto-fascist? It's how,
yeah.
At what point have we taken the leap into the, I mean, I guess there's still kind of this, there's still some checks and balances that are kind of happening, but it's a lot of those are falling apart. I mean, the Voting Rights Act stuff last week was just kind of one of the biggest knives from the Supreme Court. And I mean, we've kind of got all the things. We've got our charismatic leader, we've got the militant police force on the streets, we've got kind of
the militant
imperialist expansion
force. Yeah.
That
is unaccountable to the
not,
official police force. It's so many things at the same time. It's crazy.
Yeah, and they don't listen to any state or local laws that say they have to not wear masks. It's it's a mess. And I mean, I call it authoritarian, fascist, whatever, but I think it's I don't really, I feel sometimes when we get so caught up in the language, it feels okay, why are we really spending our time on this? Does it really, I mean, I do think there's an importance to using proper language, but in this case, I think it's how many times do we have to have this debate in a way? And I think, like you said, there's a lot of the experts tend to agree. And what I think you told me actually at one point, there was some other video and somebody was saying fascism is not going to look the same in the 21st century as it did in the 20th century. And yeah, I think there's I could probably go on about this forever, but
I think it was a tweet by Rutger Bregman, the economist, who pointed that out. He was if you're expecting the same uniforms as 100 years ago, fashion has changed, politics, the way politicians present themselves have changed. So if fascism is going to pop up, when fascism pops up in the 21st century, it's going to look like the 21st century. They're going to use social media. They're going to do all the things that politicians do in the 21st century, but fascist version of that. And it's literally you're creating AI memes of that you're posting on official government accounts that are referencing, various fascist dog whistles. Is this is the AI version of fascist propaganda. I'm almost wondering if ChatGPT is like referencing its data, it's like training data of fascist propaganda posters when it's pumping these out. It's because it's pretty much 1-to-1 at this point. Yeah. Ricardo is asking, like, is it proto-fascist or is it just fascist? I mean, so the thing with fascism is, like, there's so many branches that you can, like, this is the only pushback that I've had from people where, like, really trying to pinpoint some of the details. And I'm like there's some people who say that the Nazis weren't fascist. Like the fascism only refers to Mussolini's party between this year and this year. And that's what fascism is. And the Nazis were like a separate thing. And like, I guess I would do, like, you know, capital F fascism for the Mussolini's fascist party, as opposed to small f fascism, in the same way that we talk about, like, the Democratic Party, a capital D Democrat, and people who are in favor of democracy. But there's a bunch of different, like, variants of fascism, you know, neo-fascism, post-fascism, like proto-fascism would be the ancestor to that. In Germany, the Nazis are often referred to as Hitler fascism. And I think in the case of Trump, we need to find, you know, if we want it to be a specific branch, we can call it MAGA fascism, which is usually the term that I've been using. Or if you want to call it, like, American fascism or Trump fascism, like, but it's undeniably fascism at this point, I think.
Yeah. You're muted, I think.
Sorry, what?
I think also you need to treat it like a real ideology, right? Like, different ideologies, big ones, have many tendencies. And even if you're just looking at 1920s and 30s and 40s fascism.
You're a little quiet. Let me try see if I can boost you. Where
see if I can boost that too.
The tools of our enemies are not working for us today, guys.
How about now?
That is worse.
Better? Worse?
Yeah, that's actually much worse.
A lot worse, yeah. Where can I see my, like, everyone's
How about now?
Level? Yeah, no,
say it again.
Is this better?
Little bit.
I think it's a bit better.
There has to be, like, I have to have, like, a mixer that I can
wait.
to each individual person
That
here.
might have.
Okay.
You might have been good now.
Yeah?
Here, wait.
Better?
Give us a
you're
speech.
good. You're good. Yeah, I can hear you better now.
Okay, cool. I think it turned on some noise suppression thing because I just turned it off, called crisp, and it was not crisp audio then. But yeah, you need to treat it like a real ideology. Like, and this ideology, when it came about, and Mussolini wasn't even the first guy who tried to do it. He wasn't even the first Italian who tried to create a statelet, based upon, like, fascist understanding. So this ideology had a lot of followers from a lot of different countries. They had a bunch of different flavors in the 20s and 30s and 40s. And after World War II, they continued to have this ideology, and it continued to spread other places. Other countries didn't even have their dictators overthrown, like Portugal and Spain in just Europe. And then you can look across to Latin America, where you had every sort of flavor of fascists for a very, very long time. And so it's like, just like you treat socialism or liberalism or conservatism as these, like, big overarching ideologies, you have to treat fascism in the same way. And also you have to understand that they're a living ideology. They're not historic relics. Like, you know, people, or I mean, and also, like, people think this because they've been taught in this way. You know, there's this mythology that we all grew up with, which was like, in 1945, fascism was defeated, and we said, no more of that. It's non-existent. Like, Thanos fucking snapped it out of existence. But that's not the reality of it. Fascism went underground. Most of the people just basically recanted what they did and then went on the side and reorganized things. You have fascist parties kicking up in Germany and Austria almost immediately after the war kicks off, and they're running in elections and doing all the things. In Italy, you have basically a continuance of several fascist parties that are direct inheritors of Mussolini, with the most recent one being Fratelli d'Italia, the current governing party of Italy, which literally uses the symbol of the MSI, which was, like, the first post-fascist major party in Italy. So you know, you just have to treat it as what it is. And whether, you know, and also the thing that frustrates me around this kind of, like, meta debate is they're expecting Germany in 1945 But even the Nazis were not the Nazis in 1945 until 1945. In 1933, they're very different. Earlier than that, they're even more different. And you have this escalation of techniques and operations and things that they're doing. And this goes into like a misunderstanding of how like you need to understand these historical time periods. Like, for example, the Holocaust. It didn't fall from the sky in one day fully formed. It took brick by brick to physically build the infrastructure to be able to do what they did. Which is what we're seeing in the U.S. right now. You know, you got 100+ camps being built by ICE, and that infrastructure is going to be there, and that is one of the more scary things I think in my mind, because if imagine everything goes well, right? Like Democrats come in, win the midterms, they have a great president come in, but if they don't use that 4 years to make sure they never get kicked out of office again, and also to take down all the networks of support structures around these guys and the individuals themselves, then we're back here again in 2030, but they will have much more infrastructure built up because those camps that didn't exist will now exist. I mean, this is also why I believe we need to literally destroy these things once they're no longer in power.
Yeah. And it's like my sort of theory on this is like, if you don't, I mean, again, this is all like best case scenario that we actually get like a good person in office if we even have real elections. The like, if that time is not used effectively, all that's going to do is they're going to come back next time and go, oh, we just didn't go hard enough last time, and that's why we lost the power. And like it's like that's not that's not a solution, and that's like a huge problem in American politics, is there's just so little from the Democratic side. Like there's no real opposition. There's people who are better, but we're really struggling to find that kind of actual force to oppose what we're seeing. And the DNC or the DSCC, all the D whatever C's in the acronyms that they have, they're all they just seem adamant to not like make a serious change in a way, and that's disturbing. And of course we have our like Ro Khannas who are oftentimes a lot better, but like I mean, I've always been disturbed by the kind of immediate jumping towards Gavin Newsom and just like, oh, this is not somebody who's actually going to solve the problems. This is like maybe Bill Clinton 2.0 kind of vibes. I'm not entirely sure. It's like there's so much to unpack there, but we're just basically talking about setting ourselves up for failure, and this is where like I think why I enjoy shows like Andor and stuff is just thinking about resistance in other contexts, and like why I cover a lot of the stuff that I do is because I think that there has to be people engaging in these different ways to actually enact change. And
there's a few things that were brought up there that I wanted to comment on, because like the Gavin Newsom thing is almost comical. Like this desire to always go back to the electable centrist type candidate, like the traditional Democrat type candidate, that didn't work the last couple of election cycles. That hasn't worked since Obama. I mean, it did work in 2020 with Biden, just because, and to be fair, I do think, I mean, it's going to depend on whether Trump is going to try to do a third term. Like the next presidential election is going to be all kinds of weird because of what might happen with that if Steve Bannon is to be trusted. But if this were a head-to-head Trump versus Gavin Newsom thing, in the context of an ongoing Trump administration, in the same way that it was Trump versus Biden in 2020, I do think that in the reality of a Trump administration, that the Democrat would win. The problem is that it needs to go further than that, and we need to learn from the lesson of Biden's defeat in 2024, of Hillary's defeat in 2016, to go like, this brand of Democrat, this brand of politician is a relic of the 20th century that is obsolete in the current context, and we need to start thinking outside of the box because Republicans are thinking outside of the box, and Republicans are actually proposing alternatives. And we're starting to see alternatives like Mamdani, we can talk about Graham Plattner, but
oh God.
But we're starting to see alternatives come up. But yeah, it needs to happen faster, and there needs to we need to very quickly cycle out the old guard of the Democratic Party as quickly as possible to get to something that actually works in the context of the 21st century. Hunter mentioned the MSI logo and all of that. I always love to bring this politician up. I'm gonna send you a couple links in chat. This, and are you familiar with Alejandro Biondini, the Argentine politician?
I am not.
I'm going to show these full screen in a second. So you have this bunch of logos that are...
Boy. Look at that! Look at the door set.
Yeah. So right now I'm just showing the logos. So you have the Brothers of Italy is this logo right here, which is the current party that is leading Italy. And this logo here, they took from the MSI, which was the neo-fascist post-Mussolini party in Italy after World War II. They took this logo from this French party called the National Popular Front in France during German occupation. And both of these inspired the current, what was founded as the National Front Party and now is called the National Rally, which went through a bunch of variations over the years. Funnily enough, there's an Argentine party that has also a variant of this logo. It's called the Patriot Front, which is a rebrand of this party was founded relatively recently by a politician in Argentina called Alejandro Biondini, whose previous party had a slightly different aesthetic. And this party was banned from participating in politics in Argentina for being a little bit too obviously a neo-Nazi party. And so that's how they rebranded into this, traditional, slightly more conservative than the traditional conservative parties, using the same branding as the Brothers of Italy of the National Rally and all of that, and trying to say hey, we're not fascists. We're just regular conservatives, as opposed to the people who call themselves conservatives, but they're really just leftists, is what all of these fascist parties say. But this party was founded by this guy, which is it should tell you something. The fact that when they're not allowed to do this, they go to do this. Anyway. Yeah. So we live in a weird time where it's becoming more and more normal. I was watching it was a Man on the Street interview a couple of days ago. I don't know how old this interview is, but I just saw it. I saw a clip of it a few days ago of someone asking a random person why he thinks the job market is so bad right now and affordability and all of that. And the guy was like, "Oh yeah, it's because of this, that, and the Jews." Just casually, not even hesitating about it, not even no caveats, not even designists or it's because of Israel's war. No, it was just the Jews. And it's well, if that's something that you can just say out loud in a Man on the Street interview now and expect it to be a normal thing, that really says something about the moment that we're in.
Yeah. The rampant rise of full on old school medieval level anti-Semitism has actually kind of blown me away, because I knew it's been rising for a while, but once it kind of reaches past a certain level of containment and you're whoa, why do you even know about that you shouldn't know that exists. What's the one this American guy who was lynched they always like to bring up, And like I was shocked because I was just like, you have to like only two types of people know this. It's like people who are like historians around like racism and neo-Nazis. That's it. Those are the two types of people that know this exists. But you know, people like, you know, Candace Owens, that's what she's like trafficking in these days, like almost exclusively. And it's really wild. It's this 19th century stuff that's just like getting rebooted for the 21st century.
Yeah.
I also like one of the people in the chat on YouTube was talking about how fascism doesn't require centralization, and I think that's something that's super important that a lot of commentators just fundamentally don't get. It's like post-war fascism is very different than pre-war fascism. Like fundamentally, they as an ideology really wanted to understand how they fucking lost. And one of the big takeaways, especially from like the American side of this, which is more or less the most dominant part of the post neo-Nazi movement, was this idea that having a Führer concept, a single dude who can get killed, is a really bad idea. Like that was their big takeaway, and they do this thing called leaderless resistance, which is what they picked up from, ironically, Maoist rebels, because they were like, well, you know, if we don't have a guy, then they can't ever get rid of the guy. Or if some of our guys get arrested by, say, the FBI or whoever, then it doesn't matter because other people are doing stuff. And that's why like they were able to spread a lot easier, and also why there's so many flavors of like weird fascist right-winger, because it is such a decentralized movement. And a lot of those post-war fascists were not people active pre-war. You know, one of the big people that kind of like is the root of a bunch of the weird esoteric Nazi stuff, this lady named Savitra Devi, she was a Greek lady that went to India who became a hardcore Hitler fan, and then post-war basically created like a neo-Nazi cult, which is where like a lot of the weird, more strange Nazi stuff comes out of. And she wasn't a member during the war. Like she was like a teenager who was a weird fangirl. And like, so like this is how strange kind of ideology is. Like ideas don't have to even have their root back in the origin. They can be picked up, reframed, repackaged, brought into different national contexts, different historical aesthetics. And this is just how it works. Like these things are alive. And fascism, like uniquely amongst most more modern ideologies, it's really about communication, like communication and technology of communication. That is a core focus. And I think that's something that they understand, is that like transmitting the ideas is one of the chief components of their entire operating like existence. It's not like, you know, socialists, for example, or like Marxists in particular. It's like you want to debate some arcane bullshit with your bros at a bar. They're like, I need to be in front of millions of people. Everyone needs to know this thing. I need to constantly create content and go. And because they spent so many years out in the wild, like not being able to officially do this stuff, they had to become way more clever about like getting their stuff out there and doing it in like a hugely multimedia way. I mean, the thing I always think about is like the really, really early internet. They basically set up their own version, which was called LibertyNet. And there was a bunch of different ones. And they were basically like white nationalist intranets before most people knew the internet was a conceptual idea. And they were doing this in the late 70s and early 80s. So like they're just like way, way ahead of the game, because they were constantly trying to figure out, how do I defeat all my enemies using all the tools to me? And that's just like how their view is. You know, there's no compromise. There's none of the other bullshit any of the other political ideologies care about. There's just the victory. That's it.
Isn't that just like a strangely depressing mindset? that's what you're thinking about all the time. Like, I don't know.
I mean, to get like a little heady, I usually describe this as like how fascism operates in a fundamentally different understanding of political time than all the other ideologies. Every ideology, whether it's socialism, or communism, or liberalism, or conservatism, they have a vision of a future that will happen eventually at some point. It's not like in a year or 10 years or 100 years. It'll happen at some point. And we're kind of vaguely moving in that direction. Whereas fascist understanding of time is that there is a final battle and it is moving towards them. You're not going towards your utopia. The final battle is coming to you. And the only thing that matters is the final battle and victory. And then after victory, you have utopia. Like that is the understanding of their world. And that's because a lot of that ideology is based around like you are a hero in the struggle and you are important as an individual. even though it's a ideology of hierarchy and kind of giving yourself over to like a bigger thing. But on the individual level of how it interacts with you, it's just like, you are a special person in this story. You are Luke Skywalker. You are chosen, and you're this great battle in the future is coming to you. And it's amazing that it's like highly individualistic in this way, but it's also like the most conformist possible kind of ideology, because you're meant to sacrifice yourself. And that's another big component of it, right? Like, you're a hero, and heroes sacrifice themselves.
Yeah. I have a slightly so definitely that is a huge element of it, and the perhaps the most dangerous like individuals in fascist movements are the ones that you're describing. But I'm personally much more worried about the kind of the people who espouse maybe not the more like weird esoteric fascist ideas, but the people who've fallen into the more mainstream kind of, like the social values of fascism without necessarily identifying as fascists. Like the guy who was doing like in that Man on the Street interview and who was saying like, oh yeah, the job market sucks because of the Jews. I'm sure that person doesn't identify as a fascist. Or you have this influencer who at this point, probably if you asked, like, I don't know if she would say it out loud. I don't know if she would like, actively espouse the label, but she is ideologically a Nazi. But like Lily Gaddis, I don't know if you're familiar. She's this woman who had her 15 minutes of fame for she was making a TikTok video about like, oh, there needs to be more normies on social media, and in that TikTok video she just casually dropped the N-word. And that went super viral, and she turned that 15 minutes of fame into a social media career, and like now she has a podcast on the website that was created by the founder of the Proud Boys, where she interviews like Holocaust deniers and stuff like that. She was talking about how race mixing and pornography is Jew shit. But like she became famous by saying like, oh, she considers her opinions to be like normie opinions. You have that Peter Sweden guy who's like this Elon Musk fanboy on Twitter, who had one of his tweets retweeted by Elon Musk where he was saying, I'm not a fascist, or I'm not far right. I just believe in these ideas. And like he listed a bunch of fascist dog whistles, and then he was just, I'm just normal. And that was like the conclusion of the tweet. And that was like retweeted by Elon Musk saying, yeah, these are like normal people. And it's just like the kind of normalization of and the marketing of extremist ideas as normal is becoming more and more common.
I think I'll try to tie this back to Andor a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to get to Andor as well, yeah.
I think that something around all of this and like that sort of the normie ideas, I think what scares me in a lot of ways is when you have a large coalition of people who feel that this is the only way to preserve like order, quote unquote, like that this is what's necessary for that. I mean, and I think that, you know, kind of once you get into that mindset, it seems like a lot of people can fall into these kind of more extremist opinions and start to see that as normal because they're so heavily propagandized, whether it's Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, or Jesse Waters or whoever. Like the all of these things start to seem more normal, and it just, there's kind of this cascading effect. But I'm also sort of you know,
wait, am I losing you or
some people
wait, come back.
Yeah,
glass
you're
broken
still here, Hunter, right? Okay,
that,
so,
like
it's not just me. We're losing you a little bit,
about
Kevin.
One of the more impactful, I think, things for me in the show is when Cyril, like, is him and Dedra have their whole shebang.
We're gonna ask him to repeat all this when the internet
spoilers. I'm like, wait, this should happen. Okay. Oh no, am I Did I lose
I'm sorry,
connection?
you're breaking up a little bit right when we get into the
I
actual
think
meat
I
of the
lost
topic.
you.
But yeah.
My bad.
Let's actually get into Andor. Actually,
Am I back?
Before we get into it, I just wanted to show something off that I don't think I've ever like actually pointed this out on stream before. But yeah, I've been a long time fan of Star Wars. And like, yeah, I guess this is the way to introduce like the whole Andor thing, because it came kind of out of nowhere in the middle of a low point for the Star Wars franchise. And so, yeah, no, I wanted to show this because I've been a long time fan of Star Wars, and to the point where my carpet.
Oh my God, you have the UCS Millennium Falcon?
Yeah, I have the Millennium
table.
Falcon carpet in my apartment with my cat in the middle of it, like right in the Millennium Falcon thing.
Amazing.
Which so this carpet, there's an actual practical funny story about this carpet. This is my VR headset play area, because when I didn't have a carpet to know where I was standing in my room and I played VR, I like broke a few things on that shelf over there, but like punching it by accident. And so I was like, I need a zone that I can feel with my feet to make sure that I don't step out of it. Otherwise, I'm gonna break more shit. So yeah. And now I
had
officially
no idea
have
you were
a
into
cat
VR
cam
games.
for when I want to show something happening in my apartments. Anyway, so yeah, no, but yeah, I've been a long-term Star Wars fan growing up as a teenager, and I think as most people of our generations. And then the Disney era came, and you know, like episode 7 was kind of, you know, it was fine. It was like a greatest hits kind of montage of the franchise, but it was mostly like serviceable. And then it kind of went off the rails, and like Mandalorian season 1 was pretty good, and then it slowly degraded over time. And like personally, and I think Kevin, you felt the same way because we've talked about it. I was kind of done with the franchise. I wasn't even keeping up with any of the new releases until like Andor was going to be my last thing that I was going to be like, okay, I'm gonna watch this, and if it's not good, then I'm done with Star Wars, unfortunately. And then it came out, like first season came out, I was like completely blown away by it. It's like even without it being a Star Wars thing, it's one of the best shows ever made, period. Definitely the best Star Wars show, if not the best Star Wars thing ever. And it just had such resonance with the moment, even when it came out during the Biden term. And in hindsight, season 1 is just like so incredibly, like the way it's aged in the era of like the ICE raids and the everything that we've been seeing in the last few months in the US is kind of yeah, there's a lot to dig into there in terms of like the what it means that they were able to predict this, basically.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Yeah, sorry if my connection is bad, Wi-Fi troubles, but
You're back, it seems.
I think yeah, I think it's, you know, I forget when it was exactly, but there was some time in like earlier in the first year of Trump's second term, like, and just people kept posting all these videos from Andor, and I actually hadn't seen the show yet, but I was like, oh yeah, that looks pretty much exactly like what's happening here. And like it was like the senator from Gorman getting dragged away, and then I'm watching a clip from Christie Noem press conference with the same thing, and then brand that guy as like a crazed liberal or some whatever domestic terrorist, maybe, I don't even know. And I think it's the show. I mean, obviously very bleak, but I think that there's a lot of elements of hope in it, and just understanding kind of the small ways in which people revolt against the system. And I'm trying not to be overly vague. I feel like I'm being general, but it's obviously just beautifully written too.
I guess we can kind of give a spoiler warning so we can actually like not be too careful about spoilers. Like if you haven't seen it, I guess this is your spoiler warning. I think the show's been out for long enough that we can talk about what actually happens in it and not be too worried about that. But yeah, if you haven't seen it and you don't want any spoilers, then don't watch the rest of the stream, I guess. But thank you so much. I don't know how to pronounce your name because you have a bunch of letters and numbers in there. Wizzypew, is that correct? Thank you so much for the super chat. Which, by the way, I wanted to address this person's question from earlier, which was not about Andor, but I guess we can very quickly go into it since they gave a very generous €12 super chat. My information is that the Israel lobby supports a lot of radical right parties in the EU. Why is that the case? Or am I misinformed? You are not misinformed. Why is that the case is like, I guess we can theorize, and my kind of view on this is that they agree on a very core tenet of all of these parties' ideologies, which is hatred of Arabs and Muslims. And if they can agree on that, they don't need to agree on much else. But also, like the current government of Israel is a far right government, regardless of like the longer term project of Israel as a Zionist state. Like like the current government of Netanyahu is a government that almost entirely aligns with every single far right party in the European Union and in the US. So it's not too surprising that they see eye to eye on a lot of issues. But I think the core issue that they agree on is hatred of Arabs and Muslims, which makes it easier for them to work together on policies that go in that direction.
Also, the other part of this is that a lot of these far-right parties want what Israel is doing in Israel just in their own country, because in their worldview, like everyone having their own little ethno-state is how the world should be, and everyone just mass deported everyone to their own little ethno-state, then everything would be fine. That's like a really fundamental part of like what brings them together. But 100%, it's hating on Muslims. Like this is also what ties in like the Hindu far right in India into this like world too, because they have a joint unity in like one of their enemies, and not just that enemy. It's also like the left and LGBT people and a bunch of other things. So they're aligned on lots of things, and also like economics, other shit. Like it's not just one or not two things.
I had to switch
I think there's also the element.
My camera overheated and shut down my main camera, but yeah, I'll switch it back on when
It's so hot in the barely informed studio that the camera shut down.
This is the first time that it happens on stream. It ran out of battery once because I forgot to plug it in, but it's the first time that it ever actually overheats and shuts off. So I'm a bit surprised. Maybe it's my new setup that is not allowing for enough airflow. Maybe I need to put a fan or something. But yeah, I'll let it cool down and turn it back on later.
I was going to about how big of a Star Wars nerd I am. So I've gone to the World Star Wars Celebration. It was in London a couple of years ago. I have an Andor Lego set here. And I will shout out, actually, I disagree with Stan about like Star Wars being in a lull around the time Andor came out. I just think it's that people mainly interact with like the big movies, and they're not interacting with some of the more side stuff. And for example, like at the same time Andor was coming out, a show called The Bad Batch, which is like kind of a sequel series to the Clone Wars, came out, and it deals with like the very early days of the Empire and establishing like the bureaucratic structure and all this stuff. It is geared towards like a younger audience, like young teens, but I also find this like super valuable because oftentimes I'm thinking about how do you explain these things to children, and not just the Bad Batch was really good because not only does it have this like story about like what happens to the soldiers from the last war, like these parts of the Republic, all these things, like how do these institutions get morphed and changed, and how quickly it has to happen. This like rapidity is the thing that you kind of get across in the Bad Batch of like, it is like day to day to day, and it's one thing after another, and how it affects like, you know, away from like the metropole versus like the outer parts of the society. And then like the other side, this was much earlier in the Disney takeover of Star Wars, but the animated series Rebels was literally about a lot of the same things Andor would go in to talk about, but for a more adult audience. But it was like, what is it like to be in a illegal rebel terrorist movement, and what does that do to you as a young person over like 4 years, 5 years? And you know, these things are are deep levels of this. This is like much more on the political side of this whole thing. And I really think like if you watch these three shows together, like they feed into each other in such like an intrinsic way that's like hard to get around it. Both like from the adult side where you can get like way deeper and also like more intense about these things, but also like how you treat this to like younger people. And then also the fact that it's in this kind of same fictional universe continuity like allows you to have kind of like connecting filler into these things, because like in the Clone Wars, like at the beginning it's like very kind of almost like propagandist like stuff, but by the time you're reaching like season 6 and 7, you're like, the war's fucked, everything's bad, like everything, like you see the writing on the wall, because also we as the audience know what happens. But like then you see everyone else inside that world being like, something's fundamentally broken, like, but they don't know what it is. They don't have the language to talk about fascism because it hasn't happened yet, right? Like it's all occurring around them, but it doesn't happen. And so it takes time for people to really like wrap their heads around what is this thing that's being built around them.
Yeah, which is an excuse like, that we don't have, because we know what we have history books to look at what's happening in the world around us and putting into context. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I mean, even though the sequel trilogy, I think I'm on the it wasn't super great side of that, but I think one of the questions it could have dealt with more was like how fascism like is able to reinvent itself, how it's able to distance itself from its own history. And you see that's what a lot of the modern fascist movements, like they most oftentimes do never want to talk about that they are fascist in public. They'll call themselves, I'm not far right, I'm just right. These kind of things. We even touched on this earlier. But they also need to like present a fictional version of history that not only separates them, but also reframes how their forebears were. Because that's how you're able to like bring it back again. Because time goes on, new people are born and die. The institutional memory of this, the societal memory of this fades away. Or, for example, like in other countries that were not as directly affected by this, they don't have that even as much. And so give it, a few decades, in our case, less than 100 years, and you can get back there again. And you have to always like think like, you don't defeat all your opponents unless you like literally went and like wiped out every person that was part of it. But not just that, but like every piece of material they ever created, every book, every piece of propaganda, everything. And then also anytime someone popped up with an idea similar, you immediately had to like vaporize it. Because like this is the problem. It's an idea. The idea's existed. It's been construed once. It can be construed again. It can be invented wholeheartedly independently of each other. And this is, I think, this kind of goes into like the Eurofascism argument of like this idea of this intense like authoritarian hierarchical thing can be redone. And it also, when you can kind of look back in the past, you can start seeing the shapes of these things many times, even if there's no like direct continuity between like the things you see and you're like, that's pretty fascisty. Like a lot of people now are kind of looking at the U.S. Confederacy in like a different light because of this. Like it's not fascist because it does predate it by like half a century, but you see the thing they're trying to get to, right? You see this like in Rhodesia. You see this in a lot of like the white nationalist colonial territories that were popped up. Like the bits and pieces are there. They don't have it. They don't have the language to talk about it like you and I would understand it. So you kind of have to be like, oh, I see. There's something happening here. These ideas keep reblossoming.
I think there's something that's interesting to me in Andor that I've sort of engaging with in an external way. I'm reading this book called Against the State that's about all of these anarchist militant movements around the planet. And I just finished the section on Spain and the Spanish Civil War. And I think that's something that's difficult with fascism and resisting it is it has this very like hierarchical militant style that sort of caters to these people who want to be perceived as heroes, and then you can kind of build this very it's naturally militaristic. And there is something that I think was interesting in Andor is just watching the development over time of going from this very disjointed, decentralized resistance movement and then a struggle of moving that into a more kind of organized military and what that sort of does to the people who were in this previous system. And like, it's not necessarily that one or the other is better, but it's like there's a lot of challenges, deeper challenges in fighting the ways in which fascism manifests itself. And I think that there's kind of this lingering question for me of like, is it possible for people to kind of resist in this very decentralized, somewhat less hierarchical setup? Not necessarily completely, because Luthen in the show is very like kind of the guy that everybody goes to, and he's very secretive. But yeah, I just think that was definitely something that stuck with me watching the show, is seeing kind of the derailment of, these sort of the more pure rebels kind of getting put into this system, and then, you know, questioning if that's the way they should be doing this or not. And then they kind of keep going out and doing these kind of insurgency things. And, but that also, you know, it comes with a lot of risk. You don't have a lot of people backing you. And, yeah, I don't know. That's maybe a bit opens a lot of questions, hopefully.
Thank you,
No,
Corollas,
I
for the
think you hit
super
it on the
chat.
head.
Corollas asking us if any of us have played the OG Battlefront. Ironically,
yeah.
I've watched all the films. I've watched about half of the TV shows. I've played very few of the video games. The only video game that I've actually played like a significant amounts of time was the OG pod racing video game on Nintendo 64.
Oh my God, the game was so hard.
I loved it, but I didn't even play any of the Jedi Survivors or any of them. My brother played a few of the like dogfighting, like many of the
Rogue
like,
Squadron.
Yeah, Rogue Squadron was one of the big ones that he played. But yeah, there were so many games, and I'm sure some of them are good. But yeah,
dude, they have a new version that's it's like a kind of stripped down version of Rogue Squadron, but you get to also be physically in the cockpit, called just Squadrons. It is very fun. Like, if with your VR headset, you would have a blast. Even if you were shit at it, you just like being in the cockpit is such a thrill.
Is it?
I
If
played
it's
it
available on Quest 2,
like,
I can try to get it. I only have Quest 2. I don't have Quest 3, so I don't know if it would be compatible. But yeah, I would be open to trying.
But
I played quite a bit of the, like when I was a kid, especially. I played a lot of Battlefront, I played a lot of Lego Star Wars.
yeah,
There was yeah, and then I mean, I think I played Jedi Outcast on like GameCube or something, and then there was, I mean, I probably just kind of picked up every game, like most every Star Wars game that was coming out, and I always thought they were great. And then, like, looking back, I'm like, these are probably, like, some of these are probably just garbage. But I had a really good time with it. I haven't played any of the new, like, Fallen Order ones.
dude, they're
Yeah.
so good. It's like playing a movie. It's really wild. Like, and also like they're really good about doing like mocapping and make it very cinematic. And you like the music,
Nice.
and like it's a full on thing.
Is Fallen Order the sequel to Survivor, or
Survivor is the second one.
Okay, yeah.
So
I've seen so much like gameplay footage of that one that I almost feel like I've played it, but I haven't.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And the guy who plays Cal Kestis is like, he's really good. He really is all in on the whole project, which is nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
I love that actor. He was great in a few other things as well. Yeah.
Right.
But like I also loved KOTOR 1 and 2. I also played SWOTOR, like the MMO RPG for a little bit. What else was really fun? Yeah, I don't know. I played a lot of Star Wars games. Oh, the RTS one, Empire at War, also really fun. That game still has modding support. Like, people are still making like crazy conversion mods for it. It's like, I don't know, 15 years old or something.
Dang, that's pretty sick.
Yeah.
I definitely, when I watched Andor, I feel like it kind of brought me back in a way, and I was almost like sad at the end, because I was just like, oh, I know if I'm ever gonna feel this way about Star Wars again.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I feel really good about it right now, and I mean it. I wouldn't. It's always possible, but then I like started looking it up, and like all the actors, the people that were in it were like, yeah, this basically got made when all the streaming companies just went insane. Or like, let's just throw a bunch of money at everyone. And they did that with Andor. And so it's like this beautifully produced piece that has, like, in terms of like leftist kind of mainstream content, is probably one of, if not the best piece of content out there. Like, and I, yeah, like I don't know. It also just resonates obviously a lot with the time, but also kind of like some of the resistance movements that I happen to be learning about at this point in my life, and trying to understand the sort of American psyche in a way of how, I think there's something in the US where, like, something that I hear talked about a lot is like, when will people, I guess, engage in resistance, and what level of comfort kind of has to be broken for them to do so? And there's obviously different levels of resistance. You have people going and doing sit-ins, and then you have guys running into the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Like, that's
in Minecraft.
Like, some people might not like calling that resistance.
We do not endorse that for the YouTube censors. We do not endorse that.
No.
Also, critically, you need to know what floor the event is on if you're doing that. Just saying.
It's like just such a. I feel like the American like mind is it's spread so wide across like how people are feeling about like what they can do, and I think that a lot of people feel very, very hopeless in the like what they're doing. And I think that, I don't know, the show kind of, I think it gives some of that hope, or just like I was trying to read some of the Nemec manifesto stuff again before. I'm wondering if there's like an actual full document of that, or if it literally is only like the 5 lines that are in the show. But I do like just the kind of concept of freedom being the natural thing, and that this desire for control is expensive, costly, because it's unnatural, because it's trying to shoehorn people into a life that that's something that, yeah, it's the control of the state kind of pressing down. And yeah, it's I think it's driving a lot of people into a very rough spot. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had joined a Discord group, like political group, that formed itself around Andor, and then like watching the show, but also doing like direct action stuff afterwards. I mean, I think there's one of its
the one created by what's the name of this journalist, political influencer, Jessica Burbank.
I do not know, to be totally honest. Okay. I have to find the group. But it like rebranded as Get Free, if that's who that is.
Not
so it's
sure.
called Get Free
I
Together.
know that I did join a Discord around this as well, created by Jessica Burbank. I don't know if either of you are familiar with her. Pretty big leftist creator. She works with Dropsite News. She worked with, I'm pretty sure,
I've seen her.
Union. Yeah, like she's pretty big online. Yeah, but sorry, I interrupted you. I just wanted to check if it was the same one that I had in mind.
But yeah, I mean, I think this is also like, you see this if you go to like the marches and stuff. There's like lots of iconography from Andor. I mean, even like the big Minnesota symbol ended up being like a stylized Rebel Alliance symbol. So like, I think in politics, you search for symbolic meaning and art to like correspond with the thing you're doing politically. And I think that this, because it's so serious and deep, and also just like a beautiful show, like it's aesthetically pleasing, it inspires you with the visuals, that you're able to like convert these things. And also it's constantly kind of asking your question of like, what are you willing to do, but also like what will be the thing that gets you to do something finally? Because especially season 1, like Cassian really doesn't want to fucking be around the rebellion. Like, he's just like, I'm just here for a payday, and then I'm getting the fuck, because like, you guys are crazy, I'm not a political guy, like I want to go back to my like podunk world and just like be as is. And that's, I think, also one of the big values to me about this show, because for me, my favorite part of Star Wars is when they talk about the rebellion, but like actually what it would have been like for this. This was existing for over 14 years. It was from like the moment the end of the Clone Wars happens, you basically have like the first steps of the rebellion, or you have guys like Saw Gerrera and his partisans who never stop fighting. They basically just like the Clone Wars ended and then the rebellion started, and that's it. And they've been fighting for like almost 20 years at that point in 2 different wars. And it shows you like what this does to people over these huge stretches of time. And for me, especially because like I view like the Bad Batch and Andor like as partner pieces, and especially because they were being released at the same time, you see like year 1 through 3 of the Empire, and then you see like the last 5 years of the Empire, and what that did to people, what level of activism they want to do, what level of openness with what they're trying to do. And when you see that, and you see like things like Luthien's big speech, and like talking about like needing to push people to like more open rebellion, to more open warfare effectively, it makes you understand. It's like, yeah, I mean, if this was year 9 of me doing this, like how would my face like be? Because you see people like in the US right now, and also in other countries, like who maybe they're at year 1 or 2 and they're willing to do certain things, or like maybe certain things are work at this point in time, but by the time you're into like almost the second decade of the regime, like what choices are you willing to make then? How much do you have to do before something critical occurs? And it's hard to figure this out, because like in the US right now, you still have elections happening. They're mostly free and fair, depending on the state, unfortunately. And like there's some sort of processes going on. Like they don't have every mechanism in the state. They're very incompetent, so this also helps us. And like you feel like some normal things could still happen and change of powers could still occur. But that could change. And we don't know where things are going to be 6 months from now, 2.5 years from now during the election. And this is a big danger. And I think it really like matches up with like, at the beginning, you have like small acts of rebellion and kind of more normal civil disobedience. And then it just rises. It's like terrorism is now the thing we have to do. That's like the baseline of resistance. And then some people, that's not okay. This is like, do you have also like your electoral resistance going on, like with Mon Mothma's story arc? And when does that end? When does that become no longer useful or viable? For most people, that will take a long time for them to shift off of like that any of the normal mechanisms can't work. Or do you accept like they're not working, but also you have to do something else at the same time? This is also like Mon Mothma's theory, right? She is not strategically on board with a lot of the things going on that she is funding and supporting and backs politically in a broad sense. And so it's like this strange world of having to like live many truths, and that like your personal ideals, your personal politics, what you would want to do, sometimes detaches itself from what is necessary. And these are the questions that you have to ask yourself constantly as an anti-fascist, as a rebel in the Star Wars universe. And yeah, I mean, it brings up lots of really dark questions about like what it means to fight.
Yeah. There's a comment Yako is saying, is asking if you knew that Stellan Skarsgård had a stroke in between the 2 seasons, and he had to be fed his lines through an earpiece. So all of his acting in season 2 was because his short-term memory was kind of messed up, which makes that performance quite poignant as well. Like kind of really impressive that he was like still able to have that presence. Something that I love in the show is like the analogs to the real world, like bickering of resistance movements. There's that scene with Saw Gerrera in season 1 where he's like dismissing all of the other resistance groups as like he has like a dismissive label for all of them, like galaxy partitionist or like it feels kind of like the way that I don't remember which political scientist described or like writer commentator described leftist movements in a modern context, as he had this idea of the mythical left pole, where like there's a certain brand of leftists where they have reached the pure, like the North Pole version of the left, where when you're at the North Pole, every direction you look at is south, no matter which direction you're looking at. If you're standing at the North Pole, everything is south. And so to the perfect leftist, everyone else, no matter what difference of opinion they have with you, they're all right wing. And so they'll just like say, oh, like you're all liberals, and also liberals are fascist. Like liberals are just moderate fascists. So like they have these like slightly differing labels for the different brands of leftists that they don't want to work with. Kevin, you were also mentioning like Luthen is the guy, especially in season 1, but like by season 2 and especially at the end, you kind of see that as the resistance grew and became more mainstream and more institutionalized, he was like cast out and looked down upon. And by the end, by the last arc of the series, the new leaders of the rebellion don't want anything to do with him, don't even trust the intel that his people are bringing to the rebellion, because they're like, oh yeah, this dude was like, who's like kind of crazy and kind of a nut job. Like we don't know if we can trust any of this. And I think there's a lot of resonance to that when I'm thinking of how I can imagine something similar happening, where if things continue to get worse in the US, which I hope, like at the moment we're seeing that a lot of success from the demonstrations and from the people trying to prevent some of these camps from being opened in the US, and the incompetence of the administration is definitely not playing in their favor. So maybe, like, it seems like right now we're in a more hopeful position than a few months ago in terms of not ending up in the worst of all worlds. Fingers crossed that continues, that the momentum continues in the same direction. But I can definitely imagine a world where, like, the Democratic Party or like the mainstream moderate Democrats become those kinds of voices who take up the resistance movement, the leadership of the resistance, and then they start to like cast out all the people who started the resistance and who were bigger players early on and who were actually instrumental in pushing them into that position. Which I mean,
there's kind of already a history of that in a lot of ways, with like, especially with the civil rights movement and just the ways in which the Democrats have kind of just sidelined Black people and Black communities, and there's, I think, also just this. Yeah, I mean, it's reminding me in a way of the reason I kind of get concerned about this in some ways is I'm reading. So I just read a bunch about like the anarchists in the Spanish Civil War, and there's all of this, like, they managed to get like the Social Democrats and the Socialists to join them to fight the fascists temporarily, and then they all end up fighting each other a year later, and that's kind of the downfall of the anarchists in that movement. And then eventually fascism makes its way through, and it's I think that, like, there's kind of always this like sort of just crossing of how do all of these people work together, and how do you do it? Like, everybody has their ideology for like what's going to produce the outcome that's going to work. And like, even in Star Wars, it's kind of funny where it's like, okay, well, the rebels win, and then like later you have the First Order comes around, and I don't actually know quite as much about all the lore in that like transition, but I think that there is like it's kind of like what we were talking about at the beginning of this, that we, even if we do believe in like the electoral process and the, none of that is going to work unless they really actively push back against the fascist movement in the US. And that in some ways requires in some ways requires taking up the tools of your enemies. Like, you might have to be a little bit more like democratic to a fault. Like you can't I really liked your AFD video talking about this, where it's like, just the importance of recognizing when somebody is actively working as an anti-democratic force in your government, and what does that mean? Like, how do you deal with that? And
especially when they're not saying it out loud, when they're like, "Hey, we are democratic." When you have to recognize the signs, that the difference between their stated goals and their actual goals. Yeah.
I mean,
sorry.
I mean, one of the other things I think about during that back and forth between Saul and Luthien, I think it's also reminds me of a lot of the European resistance movements in World War II, and how you had these very bizarre assortments of people. You'd have like a communist and a monarchist, and they both fucking hate the Nazis, and that's what they're aligned on. But they have fundamentally different views of like how they got there going. But like that was just like the reality of it, and I think, you know, it's not just like leftist infighting. I think like that's like one kind of more like lower level ways to view it, but it's also like to build the rebel alliance, you had to make an alliance around a bunch of groups that had fucking bad blood with each other, not just bad blood from like rebellion tiffs during the rebellion itself, but again, you know, Star Wars is a post Civil War reality. You know, it's very much like, you know, Weimar Germany after the revolution, and then also like the counter-revolution with the Freikorps. Like everyone had personal fucking bad blood because how things went down. And because of that, like the leaders who ended up like being around for a very long time refused to budge on their position, their personal grievances, the history. And this is also kind of like an added level to like the new leaders come in for like the rebellion, but it's also like these new leaders don't have that bad blood. They don't have this history. They don't know these things that happen. Apart from like Mon Mothma, who is the leader of the, but it's also like a democratic group of like everyone, kind of every faction effectively has their own kind of veto power in it, and this is like the compromise they had to get. And then if you like kind of read a couple of the immediate like end of the Galactic Civil War stuff, this book series called Bloodlines, really good. It's about like Princess Leia and the early New Republic. You know, like that's like the thing. Like there was no joint ideology. It was like anti-imperial, vaguely restore the republic, but how that actually shakes out in reality, that could go a bunch of different ways. And you see, like, you know, as we know from like the sequel trilogy, ended up with a weak government that was highly like overly decentralized because of the fear of having any sort of like centralized power, and that ended up leaving them kind of like stuck with an insipid insurgent fascist movement that was able to sit back for a few decades, grow up power, build up a military force, build up paramilitaries, and then eventually like destroy the republic again. And this is it. It's like it's not just like having to form the broad alliance, which I think like in like the US context, like the big King's rallies have been a very powerful force to kind of bring together a bunch of tendencies. You know, when you look at like the organizational sponsor list, it's now like 60-70 groups, and they'll also like every local one working together. That helps to kind of like bridge these things together. I think also it maybe helps in the US that you don't really have multiple political parties that are competing for that space. Like there's a Democratic Party,
the Green Party, but yeah, there's the DSA, the Green Party.
It's not a real party. Yeah. Like the Green Party is like it shows up at the presidential election and runs the same lady they've been running for most of our lives.
I mean, it's not presidential elections to undermine the Democrats in favor of Russia, and that's it. Yeah.
I think it's mainly that like she likes running for president. I feel like that's the main bit. That
was kind of the vibe that I got from the Mehdi Hassan interview.
The Mehdi Hassan
she likes running for
is so brilliant. Like the way that she really didn't want to say anything bad about Putin was hilarious. Like that line of questioning in that interview was absolutely genius. But yeah, to look at the broader like political themes, because like obviously Andor is the most explicitly political property in Star Wars, but like Star Wars has been political from the start. There was that an interview or a conversation between George Lucas and Steven Spielberg that went kind of viral a few years ago of Steven Spielberg pointing out that the resistance like today would be called terrorists, and like, you know, when they blow up like an Imperial base, like in the first film, or you know, the whole Andor stuff in Episode 6 is basically what if the Viet Cong were teddy bears. and like you can take it further. I saw a take, like I saw a few
cannibalistic teddy bears.
I saw a
Really?
Is that official? Yeah, they cook some of the stormtroopers, don't they?
Do they eat people or eat Ewoks?
No, they eat people.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, but that's not cannibalistic then, though.
True.
Because they're eating.
Yeah. But I saw a summary of
That's just food, man.
a couple of days ago. I saw a summary of episode 1 that I thought was brilliant, because everyone criticizes episode 1 for being like, too overly complicated, and like the trade republic and like this embargo thing and all of that. And the way that it was described was,
and then the Strait of Hormuz closed.
Yeah, no, but like the way that I was described in this post that I saw was genius. It was like episode 1. The story of episode 1 is Amazon gets its own army and tries to force Naboo to use Amazon services. So Naboo representatives go to Parliament, to Congress, to try to get them to do something about it, and they don't. So they have to take up arms to fight against Amazon. And it's like, that is such a good way of presenting it, because like, I don't think we're too far off. Like, Amazon already has a bunch of drones. At some point, they're just going to strap some AKs on there, and that's the world that we're going to be in. A take on the new order in the sequel trilogy is so spot on, and I had already had this thought about real life neo-Nazis, which is that the sequel trilogy, the new order, aren't analogous to the Nazis. They're analogous to neo-Nazis. And the big difference there is, like, the Nazis were kind of, figuring it out as they went along. Like the Holocaust wasn't planned in advance. They kind of came up with that as the final solution during the war, as a way of, like, cutting costs in terms of oppressing the Jewish people in a more efficient way. And for the most part, the members of the party and the supporters of the party in Germany weren't really aware that was happening while it was happening. Whereas neo-Nazis today, with the benefit of hindsight, are looking at all of that and going, oh yeah, that's what we should have, like, that they should have succeeded at that, and we want to do that again, except more, if we get back into power. And the fact that, like, I don't think your average Hitler voter in the 30s would have been the kind of person who would actually think that, had they been given, like, foresight into everything that would happen. Most of them would go like, no, obviously this could never happen. This is crazy. In the same way that, if you'd described the ICE raids to any Trump supporter a year ago, they would go like, no, obviously that's ridiculous. He would never do that. They wouldn't, like, every single time you propose a hypothetical.
They still do supporter,
that. Yeah, they pretend like that's something that
still I would deny condemn. That, like, the insanity.
And they do deny, but sometimes when it's like something that is undeniable, in advance you'll propose the hypothetical to them, and they'll go like, yeah, at that point I would stop supporting him, and then it happens, and then they go like, yeah, and then, but in this context it's fine.
Did you see the stuff? Did you see the stuff with Iran where it was like the, like, conservative, like, Trump voters were like 80% against a war with Iran, and then as soon as Trump did it, it, like, swung the other direction, and I'm just like, oh my god, like, that's like, I mean, that is just, I'm sort of fascinated by, like, the social derangement in this country in a way, like the going out in the, like, frontline reporting and talking to conservatives and seeing how they can see all of the same things and have complete, like, it's not even like propaganda, be it, like, not even looking at, like, oh, CNN says this and Fox News says this. That's like their consciousness now. Like, they go out and they see things through the Fox News lens. Like, there's people in black bloc, like, full attire at a protest that are, like, waving signs. They're not doing anything crazy, and they still see them as, like, violent criminals. And sure, they go, like, sometimes they'll go up and, like, shake the fence, or they'll throw a water bottle at an ICE agent, but it's like I think, like, there's the level that's been something that's honestly like, kind of frequently disturbs me in the back of my mind, is the ways in which reality is almost feels warped and some part of me feels like the internet has kind of just destroyed our brains, but I am sorry, I'm not trying to be a doomer about all this. I think there's still hope.
But I think you're describing for a while they were talking about these like content bubbles, but I think this is a bad way to view it. It's a reality tunnel, and that tunnel is built with reinforced concrete so that anything that comes near it just bounces off the wall. And that's the dangerous part about it. And it's such a holistic thing, the Trump supporters changed their opinion on Iran, but it was downstream of every Trump content creator flipping on Iran on a dime because they know this is the new rules of the game, so this is what we have to present. And because they have built parasocial relationships with all these people, they start to change their opinion too. And this can happen very quickly. And because like the volume of the content is so much, like your understanding of reality is just like able to be manipulated constantly. I mean, I always think of this like Timothy Snyder bit quote that he says, it's like fascism depends upon weaponized unreality. And like I think about that all the time. Because like if you detach yourself from like the material reality of like analyzing the world around you, the physical world around you, then like everything else is immaterial. Anything can be changed. Anything could be anything at that point. And this is scary because it's true. Like you can see this happens to people. But it's not good, right? Like how do you have a good, how do you have a good government? Like how could you, like, for example, let's say like perfect US president with a huge majority comes in and they fix all the things. But if you don't judge your surroundings and your country by reality, instead only through the lens of fantasy that's presented to you from propagandists, how can you judge whether or not things got better or worse? Because you are no longer measuring things about how it actually affects you on a personal level. I mean, this is also how you're able to kind of like, I'm almost done. But it's like this is how they're more like the cost increases on gas or like other stuff, because like they can create these kind of like little tiny logical leaps from each other that removes like their actual day like bread and butter issues from support of like the guy. And then also like I think about this idea of like the wages of whiteness. This is a concept from W.D. Du Bois, and this is like because they feel like the people they hate are being punished, or that their position in the hierarchy of America is being fought for, like they're willing to take a lot of pain, like immense amounts of pain. And I think that's like the scary thing. You saw this in Nazi Germany too. Like, like people who were not like crazy hardcore addicts, like near the end of the Third Reich, people are doing like insane things, like, old men and boys being sent at the kind of stuff. And like, if you just continue to detach yourself, you're willing to start making insane sacrifices and do kind of like bizarre things.
You're reminding me of an editorial note I need to talk about with Stan related to the stuff we're working on with an interview that I have. I was thinking about like, this is tying to Andor. Two of the most fascinating characters to me are Cyril and Dedra. And like, I'm actually so curious. This is the thing that I said. I told my partner after we finished Andor, I was like, the one show that I really want to see is I want to see a Dedra show after the Empire falls.
I have a pitch on
that's
this.
Fascinating.
She dies. They kill her. She takes the fall for
no,
everything.
They don't. She's in prison at the end.
They put her in
she doesn't get out of there.
Yeah,
but I have a pitch on this.
Probably not.
Which is I saw I didn't come up with this, but it was such a good pitch. It was a spin-off series of Andor that happens in between the original trilogy and the sequel series, about the rise of the First Order. And the idea was Clea, who's like older now, and is like this jaded kind of activist or like political operative, has to team up with like release Dedra from prison and team up with her to figure out with her like old imperial contacts, figure out what the hell is happening with this new political movement. And I was like, I'm so on board to see that. I would love to see that happen.
With Dedra and Cyril, like I think that kind of in this, when we're talking about this sort of this, I think this is what I was trying to hit at earlier, is the people who become so committed to order. And I'm kind of stealing from some like an MLK quote in this way, but it's that moment that like the glass kind of breaks for Cyril, where he finally realizes like, oh, we're the bad guys. But it's like not complete in a way. Like he's still so personally invested in it that he goes after Cassian, and I'm like, I think that there's that position of limbo is really interesting for a lot of. I mean, I think I've spoken to a lot of like anti-Zionist Jews that grew up in a very Zionist household that they've struggled in that sort of space of realization. And for Cyril, it's like fucking 5 minutes. um, but and I think that I'm just sort of fascinated by, what actually evokes the change in people, because I mean, Dedra obviously has like she gives the order, goes ahead with it, but Cyril, like, I sort of have in some ways arrived at this conclusion that I don't know how much. This is where I struggle with like the stuff that I make sometimes, is like, I think part of why I lean into reporting is because I worry that a lot of the stuff that I wonder if I'm actually capable of changing people's minds, and like I sort of have to believe that I am able to do that in a way, but in some ways it feels like for a lot of people it just has to be a very personal experience that like shifts their perspective, and I think that is a really challenging thing to overcome. And maybe you disagree, and that's totally fair. Yeah.
I mean, I once was told when I was much younger by an activist in New Orleans that like some people need to be shook, like personally shook by something, and then once that happens, they wake up out of everything. Unfortunately, you don't know what that thing's going to be or if it'll ever happen to everyone, and that's just the reality of it. But I think like Daedra and Cyril, they both in different ways wanted to fulfill the hero fantasy of fascism. Cyril, because he thinks like, I want to be a good hero, and thus I need to be an agent of order. And if I bring order and get rid of chaos, then I am doing something good. Daedra is on the kind of opposite extreme of this, where she's like literally like grew up in imperial like orphanage, told like, your biggest thing is to give your whole life and be a hero for the empire and blah 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 blah. But she realizes at the end she's nothing. Like, you are nothing in the empire. You are a cog in the machine. You just stay as a cog, and you can enjoy your life because cogs get benefits. But that's like what you need to be. And she's just like, no, I'm special. I'm going to be the great hero for the empire. I can do it. Me, individually me. And they both come to very different realizations of this. Like Cyril through like his stationing on the planet whose name I can't remember now. Gorman, yeah. Like he spends like a year there, like alone, but for a lot of it. And he starts realizing, it's like, am I creating order or am I creating disorder? And if disorder is evil, am I evil? Is the things I'm doing evil? And this starts breaking his like conception of what is right. I mean, I think that's like the thing that starts breaking him down. And also like he's a person who believes like there's an objective truth of the world. And so like when he's interacting and being part of like this propaganda creation and this fantasy world, it really just breaks his entire worldview of like, the world is like this, it is black and white, there is order, there is this. And he's basically given like infinite gray, and then realizes, oh, I'm on the wrong side of this. That doesn't mean he's ever going to become a rebel or anything. It's just that he realizes like, I wasn't doing the thing I was. My trust in the societal contract that I believed I was a part of is gone. If anything, it's a much more like personal and earnest thing than Daedra just not realizing like where she was in this behemoth, and that that the empire means you are nothing. There is only one person in the empire. It's the emperor, and that's it.
I think that what's interesting with Dedra is I almost think that she would still keep trying to go back and still keep trying. Like that's her. Like if she's given some form of grace, I would be like she might actually try to keep going and climbing the ladder because it's like all she knows. Whereas with Cyril, it's like I don't like you said. I don't necessarily think he's going to go be a rebel, but I think there's like that's like a complete destruction of your reality, and I think that that's part of I think what is so difficult for a lot of people is that you facing that is an extremely challenging thing. And like I I feel like for me I had the kind of benefit of just like years of slowly kind of deconstructing a lot of my thoughts around everything, and I'm still constantly doing that, and it probably takes up way too much mental energy, but yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, also the thing that
the way that I read Cyril to me is that he needed something to belong to, and it just so happens that he latched onto the Empire for that. But had he, been around the different people, he would have latched onto the rebellion. Like the question is whether he would have been able to transition from one to the other. Is a harder thing to do because like you have to change your entire identity, and changing your identity from, even though we don't really see him do this because he dies pretty quickly after realizing that he was one of the baddies, but changing your identity from being part of the Empire to not being part of the Empire is, I guess, easier than to being like actively opposing it. But I think like it would be very easy to imagine like a parallel reality, a parallel timeline where Cyril had been around different people and had become like the exact same person, but on the other side of the same conflict.
Yeah, I mean, if he's 20 years younger, he's like the biggest hardcore Republic fan of all time because like that dynamic still exists in his head. He would be super against the Separatists. He would be all for the Republic and the structure. And yeah, I think it's a moment of time like where people end up following their experiences, and then the other question is like, do you need Cyrils to join the rebellion, or do they just need to stop participating in the Empire? Like, because this is another thing, or slowing it down, or doing something like some small act, and that's I think a bigger question, and it kind of goes back to this idea that you to bring all of these very disparate people that have different levels of resistance and also different levels of what they're willing to do to destroy the system that they find unjust. And this unfortunately is highly individualistic. Yeah. I mean, it's a very strange thing to think about because it's like in kind of the Star Wars universe, you're not given like an opportunity to leave. The Galactic Empire is everywhere almost, except for Hutt space. But they're like an ally of the Empire. It's like kind of irrelevant.
We're getting
so it's like there's never an
ability.
I know so much about Star Wars.
Have you seen the Ewok movies?
Actually, we recently watched them, but I never saw them go like obviously. I haven't seen the holiday special actually.
I haven't seen the holiday specials, but there's like specific like really bad Ewok movies that I watched as a kid. I watched like a cartoon show about the Ewoks too, I think.
Yeah, they have it on Disney Plus if you've got it. You can watch all the old classic stuff. And they also have like the really weird droids animation from the 70s. Very strange. The 70s were a strange time.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know if this was actually a plan that they worked on. I heard that initially Andor was supposed to be 5 seasons because it covers 5 years. Season 1 is 1 year, and then season 2 ended up being 4 years, like 1 year per arc of 3 episodes. But I think originally the plan was to have 1 season per year. And I kind of, on one hand, I think we ended up with the tightest and best version of what the show could have been. Because if they had wanted to keep that up for 5 years, like it would have fallen apart. Disney would have tried to change the activism in the show, like the fact that they were able to get away with what they did over the course of 2 years is probably as much as they could have gotten away with. But I almost wish that they had more time to explore a lot of the themes of like like the idea of someone like Cyril staying within the infrastructure of the Empire, but being slowly convinced that the rebellion is right, and then rather than leaving his job but more like either quiet quitting or like quietly sabotaging the Empire from within. Like we get a little bit of that with like the Lonnie is the spy, but I think like historically there's been a lot of those things as well of people doing what's it called, weaponized incompetence, to try to clog up the machine of the of fascism, and yeah, that's an aspect of it that I would have been interested in seeing more of in the show, and I guess it can still be explored in other Star Wars properties. Maybe it is in some of them, but yeah, it would have been cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, I heard him talking about this, the showrunner, and he was saying like basically because season 2 already took like 2.5 years to film, and they filmed it like almost immediately with season 1 being done. And so like it was 3 years actually, but just 2 seasons. So like the length of time they were spending was just like huge. Like he realized, he's like, yeah, there's just no universe where we do 3 more seasons that take 2.5 years each to do, and this is a 10-year project to do 3 seasons, and we have to get money. Like, and also just like there's a lot of really famous people in the cast, right? Like they're gonna go do other stuff. Like exactly. You can't lock them in for a decade of their lives to only make 3 seasons worth of TV. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I think we got the tightest version of this. And what's nice is like you can keep going back to these periods in Star Wars because of the way the IP is kind of designed. It's like it's designed to like more books, more comics, more stuff to like go deeper. And I think that's one of the big values. Maybe in like 20 years we get like a semi-sequel series that like dives into like something else. Because it's not like these stories are going to become less relevant. If anything, they'll age and become more relevant. And that's one of the other, I think, timeless natures of it.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed for like the two actors from Clea and Dedra's actors in like 10 years come back for reprising their roles in a spin-off.
I mean, they've been trying to do like some sort of cop procedural like investigatory show for ages. Like I think they're like did 2 full attempts to do it. Even one got announced, but it's like I don't know why they keep falling apart, those projects.
I have like so little faith that they can pull it off at this time.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe they can.
You need to go watch the Bad Batch. Go watch the Bad Batch. It's not a one-off. Like you will, you don't know how gutting it was because like both season, like the 3rd season of Bad Batch and the 2nd season of Andor finished the same week, and like the 4 weeks prior, I basically bawled my eyes out during every single Bad Batch episode, and then I had to watch Andor immediately. This is emotionally gutting, man. Like, and like the thing that's
do I need to have?
Oh no, but like
do I need to have seen any?
Is you don't know. Like you don't know any of the characters. Like none of those characters are in later content, so you have no idea if everyone's gonna die. That's the scary part about it. You're like, well, at least in Andor, I know Cassian makes it to Rogue One, but yeah. But to start stuff, just watch season 7 of the Clone Wars, just the Bad Batch episodes. So like the first 3 episodes. That's all you need. That's the only like prep.
I like I never ended up finishing the Clone Wars because there's so much of it. But I know that something that was frustrating with, and this is like kind of the way that again, like I'm gonna trash the franchise as a whole just a little bit, but like George Lucas is not the best writer. Like he's good at a lot of things. He's not the best writer. He's not the best at directing actors. He's good at finding narratives, I guess, and like telling those narratives in the macro sense. But that's the difference between something like Andor that is so focused on detail and so focused on like the execution of it. The execution of, for example, Anakin's turn in episode 3, like in the film, is like really clunky and felt always like off, and it's coming because you've seen the sequel, like you've seen the originals, but you don't. Like, it doesn't ever make sense that he gets there. And I've seen edits that I've never ended up watching in full context of the show, but I've seen edits of the Clone Wars, of how they retold that story with more time and with more space to breathe and with more context of why he made the decisions that he made. And I felt like the Clone Wars did it so much better than the actual film, which is unfortunate because obviously more people have seen the films than have seen Clone Wars.
Yeah. I think that's just the nature of the formats, right? Like if you have a shit ton of episodes and multiple seasons to like dig into like how a guy through several years of war changes his existence, basically, you can just do a lot more than you could in like, you know, a movie that you're doing a ton of stuff. Like, you know, Revenge of the Sith is like a jam-packed movie. And if you go back and watch it, you realize like how fast the clip is on that. It's just like something happens, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And Clone Wars, you can be like, we can have a 4-episode arc where like none of the main characters are in it because we're going to talk about some like niche side story off somewhere else. And you just get huge capacity to do those kind of. And honestly, like it makes it a bigger story and much more tragic because you watch Anakin go from like hero to villain over time, and it's sad, and you just see it slowly happening. You have this looming darkness in the future that you know as the viewer is coming, and it's unavoidable. Like it is a train that will crash no matter what you do. And I think that's the beauty of the Clone Wars. Like it's not just like the Anakin getting corrupted and turning the dark side, but it's like the entire Republic slowly dying. And then because you're watching it from this kind of like God's eye view of seeing all these things, and all the people inside this story are only seeing their subjective perspective, it becomes like more and more clear, and you catch on slightly before everyone else does. And that makes the tragedy just so much more, you know, greater and operatic and all the things. And yeah, I mean, I think that's also why like I'm a big fan of the animation, because they are allowed to like explore these things for way longer and way deeper. And then also convert it into an audience for like younger people to get on the same like depth of emotion and political thinking, but you know, for an easier uptake of it. Not to say like these are children's shows. The later episode, the last 4 seasons of Wars is like, it's pretty fucking brutal. Like it's a really intense show. Bad Batch is like from episode 1, you're like, you start off with like Order 66. Like that's how the show starts. You know the show's gonna be way crazier if that's the beginning point of the show. And yeah, I mean I think that's the hard thing, and taking just like a long look at war and what that means and what that does to us, and then what afterward means, and how, you know, like one of the main, I think, through lines of the Bad Batch, for example, is like the main guys, the main clones were watching the whole time. Like they really do not want to be part of a rebellion. Like they did their war, they want to go live a quiet life alone and like be free. But it's impossible to get away from it. Like the Empire is always coming. It's always there around the corner. You might be good for a few months or a year or something, but then it will come to you, and there's no escaping it. And you see some other characters, other clones who are like, no man, we need to do something. We have to fight. Like we have to blah, blah, blah. Like we were soldiers of the Republic. Like they destroyed everything we did, like everything. And they're like, no, man, I don't want to do this. And this, and they're like the people at the center of this, right? Like, you know, the clones are on like the bleeding edge of everything that's going on in the Empire. And so like this idea that like, even then you can have people who are directly affected being like, I do not want to fight anymore. Like, I can't do it. Like, I'm done. I'm going to try and hide. And it makes it very different from like like he's affected. The Empire comes like later and stuff, but he like if he just kept his head down, like he could just go by his day, right? You know, one of the lines I think about is like it's from Rogue One, and it's just like, how can you accept like the Imperial flag flying across the galaxy? It's like, you don't notice if you don't look up. And like that's like the reality of that so many people try to do. Like even if they personally disagree with things, it's much easier just to like go with the flow and stay down.
Yeah, there's slightly different topic, but that's kind of referenced, not directly, but like there's a very similar thought in the Palantir manifesto that came out recently, like the 22 points tweet that they had. In one of the points, I don't remember which one, it's like everyone's spending too much time thinking about politics. That's just hurting everyone's mental health. Like you should stop thinking and engaging with politics and just like go back to like worrying about your own life. was the sentiment of one of the points, which is funny because like you look at old Alex Karp interviews where he says like Palantir's technology, the kind of technology that is selling to the government, won't infringe on your rights in the sense that like your right to like, you know, cheat on your wife is not something that Palantir cares about. And he's like he like mentions a bunch of like very mundane non-political activities of people like doing naughty things, and he's like, you're still allowed to do that. Like Palantir's technologies will never be an obstacle to you doing that. But he doesn't ever say like our technologies are not going to prevent you from protesting the government, or the technologies are not going to prevent you from actually doing important stuff. But like as long as you're not engaging in politics, we don't care what you do. You know, is the kind of thing that they very much want to encourage that sentiment. There's something that I haven't even mentioned yet, but to me, when I was rewatching the series a couple of months ago, in the context of what happened in January and February, is episode 3 of season 1, when the Corpos do that raid looking for Andor on Ferrix, and you have all of the inhabitants of Ferrix starting to bang pipes to warn everyone else of the ice raid that's currently ongoing. And that was such a, like, that came up 2 years ago. And the way that they were able to, like, perfectly capture all of those social media videos that came out from a couple of months ago of, like, the whistles and the, you know, stay inside, close your doors, they're here kind of screams in the night that we've been getting videos of ice raids. You know, I think a few years from now, when people look at that, they're going to think, oh yeah, they like, you know, that was a reference to, like, they're not going to realize that it came before that stuff actually was happening in the US. And they're going to think, oh, this is just like, you know, dramatization of real life, which it is, but it's dramatization of real life from a long time ago. And the reason why they were able to so perfectly predict what was going to happen in the US is not because they're like so smart and so brilliant and able to see into the future. It's because this is following a very familiar pattern. And the fact that the fiction so perfectly mirrored reality should like worry you about what could come next if this pattern continues to follow the same trajectory that it's currently on. And again, like, I'm at this point right now, I'm like moderately hopeful. A few months ago, I was a lot more pessimistic with all of the measures that they're still trying to pass. They're just failing a lot more than it seems like they might be. But yeah, I mean, we'll have to keep an eye on what's going to happen for the midterm elections. We're going to have to keep an eye on everything that happens in the next few months / couple of years. But yeah, it's concerning that we're like, the reason why reality looked so much like the episodes of Andor that came out 2 years earlier is because we're at that point in history where things look really, really bleak.
Yeah. It also reminds you, like, none of this stuff happened the first time. Like, it's all happened many times. You know, even the pot banging and stuff, you know, this goes back to not only deportation raids earlier in the US before, like, the most recent ICE stuff, but also in other places. So, you know, so much of this series is deep in the history of, you know, resistance movements and anti-fascist things that have occurred before. And, you know, what's even more kind of strange or like interesting is that, you know, all the scripting and the initial stuff on this show was like even before the release. So, you know, we're talking about like the end of the first Trump term, basically, when it's all starting to get cooked around. So, you know, it's, the past is sometimes very good at letting you understand the tactics that are at play, the things that are being done. There's only so many ways to fascism, right? So I think that's one of the huge values, and it shows the kind of like the eternal struggle of it and the nature of it.
Yeah, I think there's this like you said something about the Clone Wars earlier, and this kind of seeing the slow destruction of the Republic. And I think that we are we're kind of in both at the same time. Like that, there are things that are in Andor that are very like direct parallels to what we're seeing, but I think that a lot of the US is still kind of grappling with like, the project of democracy potentially not panning out, and like or just like we have failed to actually enforce democracy in a way or I think that that is something that a lot of people, or at least I am dealing with, is looking at like our society and just it's a you never really know what's coming down the road. Like it's sort of I used to be like, oh, I don't think Trump would do this or that or whatever, or like I wasn't sure, maybe I'd be like doubtful, and I'm like, I just don't even make statements like that anymore, because they're basically only like a wave of the hand away from doing, just completely going full authoritarian. Like it's like, sure, they would have various struggles, but it's like I feel like I'm not really under an illusion that they couldn't just decide to do that at some point. Just say like, oh fuck the courts, like fuck this and that, and we're done. I think there's various ways they could try to, but
I really think the
very
only
much
question
they already
for them
on the courts
is
thing.
Can they get away with it? Is the only thing that they're wondering.
Yeah.
If they think that they can get away
Yeah.
with it, either because they have enough popular support, which at this point is even they realize that they don't,
Well,
or because the military or the police or whatever ICE force, like in unbelievably overfunded secret police force that they have, is so well entrenched and loyal that they think that they could get away with it. I think that is the only thing that is the uncertainty of how long they would spend in prison if they fail is the only thing preventing them from taking that final step, I think.
I think it's also logistical.
Like
it's logistical, right? They don't have the guys. They can't do the thing they want to do in the way they want to do it. That's why you would have like specific ICE invasions of specific places, because like they only have like X amount of guys. The more they've hollowed out the administrative state, the less capacity they have. Like their big lesson from like Trump 1 was, we really need to get the military on board, which is why they've been very aggressive on Trumpifying the military, especially at the military academy. The other thing that they've realized now is that like you need a bunch of guys to do the thing in a country this big with this many people. And I think that's the part that they kind of fumbled on at this point. There's a lot of like militia groups and all these things, but like there's no like SA or SS equivalent organization that's like, hundreds of thousands of dudes willing to go do the stuff. They can't even get that many people to work for ICE, right? So you start hitting the material reality of trying to implement your system. And because like the kind of the resistance stuff is being so big, you have like, normie people in Minnesota and going toe to toe with the feds. It makes them like less inclined to it will work unless they prep early or more. And I think this is also the fact that Trump and MAGA has a lot of tendencies that are not all pulling in the same direction. And even though like most of the more normie Republicans are gone, you still have people like, like Marco Rubio, who's still trying to fight the Cold War with like strange Venezuela, Cuba stuff. You have Pete Hegseth, who believes his like mission is to be a religious crusader for Iran, or like to. And this takes you away from like actually solidifying your regime and then like doing the things to create the dictatorship. Like I imagine there were many nights that Stephen Miller is just like fucking screaming because he's just like, all this stuff is taking away from actually putting together the regime. What the, But like this is the real thing. Like you and I know this, but like so many times it's like just last week with the assassination attempt, right? If you imagined another fascist taking this moment, this opportunity to do crazy things and just being like, we need to get my ballroom. It's very important. The ballroom, it's the most important thing right now. Like, Stephen Miller must have been screaming into the wall being like, this was it! We were handed another... Why do they fuck it up? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also think fumbling on the Charlie Kirk stuff also kind of made him a bit gun shy.
I'm sort of thinking back on, there was I mean, I do some kind of analysis of like right-wing movements and stuff, and there was a piece, I think from the podcast It Could Happen Here, about how, like, it was talking about Curtis Yarvin and how, like, he's kind of the philosopher behind like Peter Thiel and probably a lot of Palantir stuff and just a lot of what is happening today. And his perspective, at least, I forget exactly when this came out, but he was like, they're not moving fast enough. Like he basically was like, we're flooding the zone, but we're slowing down. And if we slow down, it doesn't work. And so, and I think that's where things are right now. That's kind of strange, is that they've kind of walked in a bit of a different direction. Like they're in really, really deep in Iran in a really bad way. And like they looked at Minnesota, and that was like, maybe the Minnesota thing was like, okay, no, they're actually going for it. They're really pushing the zone. And then they were like, oh wow, people really didn't like that. Like the people like actually showed up and tried to stop this from happening. And I think there's also, you mentioned something around like geography, and the geography of the United States makes it a challenge, I think, to pull off that type of swing. The something that has sort of been this is something I've been thinking about a lot, is looking at Minnesota versus Los Angeles. And when Los Angeles last summer, basically all of the same things happened that happened in Minnesota. It's just that LA is a lot fucking bigger. And like, it's a lot harder to like be there to see everything happening. It's not necessarily on your street corner every day. Like, and I think that was one, it was weird that I don't necessarily think that the message really stuck together for people. And like, LA is by and large still under this massive force of oppression. But I think that there is like, they seem to be floundering in a way of like, how do we achieve this sort of like kind of dictatorial style in such a broad landscape? How do we there's a lot of people who like, there's a lot of Democrat candidates who are talking about like, you know, we need to humanize ICE agents and stuff. And I think there's shouldn't be the priority, but yeah, I think I can understand the perspective. Yeah. I'm just like, I actually think, you know, the level of vitriol that people generally have for this organization probably does keep a decent number of people from like going to that, because it's like, oh, do you want to like have a lot less to worry about financially in a country that's collapsing and the financial system is about to get like potentially about to get blown out? Join ICE. And it's like, people are like, no, I don't want to be a part of the fucking goon squad. I like that also are sort of uniquely incompetent in their own way as well, which presents such an interesting, there's so many layers of like, but I like that quote about the unreality, because there's just so many things that are, this is sort of extrapolating it, but just so many elements of the administration that are like, it's a circus. It's just a circus out there. Like it goes all the way down to the federal agents. And like, obviously it's a very, very brutal business, but that level of incompetence, especially, we didn't do the Iran stream today, but holy shit. Like that is, if we're going to talk about incompetence, and like, that is probably one of the quintessential examples of like, they could have, they probably should have walked away from this a long, long time ago. From a strategic perspective, I would think from a moral perspective, obviously this never even should have happened. But like, yeah.
Yeah, there's a speech that I played in our Iran video by a French senator, and I only played a small part of it, but the whole thing is like 7 minutes long. It's not that long, and it's subtitled. I even think it's auto dubbed if you go look for it, and it is just so good at pointing out the absurdity of the Trump administration. He goes through like every single cabinet member and like describes them from like with the benefit of the perspective of being on a different continent, looking from the outside, is like, this is just a complete clown show. Everything here is like ridiculous. There's this the idea, like a few of them have already been fired since I first was thinking about this, but like historians looking at the early second Trump administration are going to look at like the four horsemen of the mass deportation policy, or like Greg Bovino, who loved to masquerade in his like long SS trench coat. Tom Homan, who was like a guest on neo-Nazi podcast, who was a scheduled speaker at a neo-Nazi political event, canceled last minute, but like there's a reason why he was supposed to speak there. You have like Stephen Miller, who's like occasionally called Pee Wee German or a few other nicknames, who's like very often compared to Goebbels. And you have what's her Kristi Noem.
Kristi Noem.
Do you know Kristi Noem's full name and initials? Did I point this out to you? I know that I told Kevin about it. Did I point it out to Hunter?
Wait, is it Clan?
Yes, it's Clan.
No.
Let me pull up the wiki and show it on screen. Just to show people this is amazing. Kristi Lynn Arnold Noem is her full name.
Oh my god!
Like that is J.K. Rowling level of lack of subtlety and choosing a character name. That is just like cartoonish.
You know this Marx quote where it's like first time is tragedy, second time is parody. I feel like we've reached like the corollary for this, where it's like first time is tragedy, second time is parody, third time as art house, interpretive dance, psychedelic spree, and it's just like it's like, have you ever like, because like a lot of the main U.S. like official channels are just posting like full on white nationalist like content now, like just like wall to wall every day, and just like sometimes you look at them and like part of your brain in the back is just like, do you remember when this was just boring posts about meetings that no one cared about? And it's like, do you remember those times when this was not an important avenue for spreading neo-Nazi propaganda? And then like, there's like, people like this argument like, oh, the U.S. government's always been racist. And I'm like, it's not been like this before, buddies. Like it is, even in the height of Manifest Destiny, it wasn't doing this stuff. Yeah, it's surreal. But like honestly, one of your earlier points, like I think, because I was talking with someone else earlier about, it's like I think one of the main differences in like the U.S. situation is like you have a very strong federalism that exists in the U.S. And this default decentralization, in addition to like the physical geography of the place, creates like layers of redundancy. And it's like, yeah, Trump can do like whatever he wants in like Republican states, but that's not the point of like the cruelty theater. It's to like cause confrontation with like governments controlled by Democrats. And this ties back to Star Wars, because one of the things that Emperor Palpatine did in the early Empire is he established imperial governors on every planet. And he pitched this as like, oh, it'll be a direct line to me. It'll be cool. You still self-govern. Like, that's all fine. But like the reality was like he was trying to replace the governments by creating a parallel structure. And this removal of kind of like the decentralized nature of the Republic into the hyper centralized and also personal relationship to Palpatine as an individual was like highly critical. And I think, this is also what you see in the US. It's like it's trying to turn into like this personalist regime around a particular family or group of families. And this is kind of slamming into like the default nature of the Federal Republic as it exists in reality. This is also why it's like, also just, I guess, for like openness, I'm a very minor officer in the Democratic Party, but that has nothing to do with what I'm about to say. But one of the things that I think makes it hyper resilient, the attempts of MAGA right now, is that they are able to get institutions to get on board with their project, even now when they're very unpopular. So, sometimes people will ask me, it's like, oh, do you win well in the next election? And I'll be like, well, if everything's like free and fair for the most part, like it will probably be the best result since like FDR or something. But that doesn't necessarily mean we've won, because I think in the bigger picture battle, where you're talking about institutions and groups and people with power in the system moving between these camps of like democracy in the broadest sense to MAGA fascism, like they continue to move there. Allies of Trump continue to buy up institutions to bring them over there forcibly. And this is something that I think we're still losing on. I mean, just think of like stuff like the Paramount deal and all these other things. The media consolidation is still happening, and it's happening faster and faster. Like the amount of things that are now in the Trump column, either beholden to him or one of his like buddies and backers, is much higher and worsely lopsided than it was a year ago, even though Donald Trump is significantly unpopular and on track to probably be the most unpopular president of all time. So it's like, this is the thing that scares me. It's like, okay, what happens when you like win the political system back, but you don't have any of the other institutions? Like, what does that do? Because like, as we know from people like Viktor Orban or many other regimes, like the stickiness of these regimes is how much of the society they're able to kind of infiltrate and take over. And while this has a breaking point at some point, it helps to, in the immediate term, reinforce and strengthen that movement and continuously legitimize them with more and more audiences. And that's the thing. That's the most scary.
Yeah.
You can find me at Rota Rota Media on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. I got a Substack. I got all the things. I talk about far-right politics, US, UK, and European politics. The European far-right is one of my special topics, and I love it. Always a good time. I love Discord, so feel free to come by. And yeah, I've also got a conference coming in November together right now and a few other fun projects.
Sweet. You can find me at Kevin H. Foster on just about any social media, I think, at this point. And I have a Substack called Last Week in Hell, where I write a lot about Oregon politics, but also, when I have time, a lot of national issues, and do some commentary and lots of videos across all these different things.
I just realized that I was very briefly muted on stream.
Subscribe right now. I'm following you on TikTok, man.
Nice. Yeah, and we also, we have some upcoming cool projects on Barely Informed as well that I'm super excited about, and I'm super excited about like more of your reporting on the channel, just long term. I have a really good feeling about that, especially after this conversation. Anyone who wants more Barely Informed stuff, we're kind of slow at posting these days, but follow us everywhere. I'm being asked by a team member to plug our LinkedIn, so yeah, you can also find us on LinkedIn. We don't have a Substack yet, but at some point very soon we're gonna start that. And thanks for joining. Did you mention your Substack, Kevin? Last Week in Hell, you did, right?
Yeah, it's called Last Week in Hell.
It's really good stuff.
I guess it's growing a lot in world politics.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but I appreciate it when people support me on there. It's really helpful. It's better than TikTok, who literally just demonetized me again the other day for unoriginal content, I guess. I'm pretty sure that I'm in like every single video on my page. But
pretty sure
so that's fun.
I spent half of my time like fighting with the stupid moderation.
Yeah, I got.
I think that's what turned you off on it, right? Yeah.
I got demonetized and confirmed to be demonetized for the montage of religious fanatics in the Trump administration that I put in our Iran video, and that was considered unoriginal content. Like
I also
see
had
the argument, but yeah. TikTok is a
I
dead
had
platform
Linktree.
anyway.
Yeah, Linktree actually banned one of my links for to my Substack for it wasn't to my whole Substack, but like I had a title that had the word genocide in it, and it said that it was hate
Jesus.
speech,
What?
and I was like, I'm like,
I didn't even know they
I'm trying to check
moderated
it.
this stuff.
I had no idea Linktree moderated either. That's crazy.
I was like, what the hell?
What
so I'm trying to figure that out.
What do they have running on that website?
I don't know, dude. I was like, what the hell is going on? It's not even like talking about, like, it wasn't even talking about like Palestine. I think it was about Trump's Truth Social posts.
Like the one about destroying an entire civilization.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I guess it's hate speech to say that Trump's threat to destroy an entire civilization is genocide. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's wild. We live in wild times. We didn't even like get into this, but like yesterday was World Press Freedom Day. Kevin, you've been posting about.
I have a video on it.
Yeah, you've been posting. You posted a video on that. You've been posting about just like the difficulty of being a journalist these days. So yeah, whether you support us or other people, like anyone watching, I genuinely encourage you to go support any journalist, especially independent journalists. Because it's tough times. I shouldn't say this, but like I just refused a sponsorship by companies that we didn't align with. And those are like those are difficult positions to be like, to have like moral consistency on things, and to try to navigate this while also making a living out of it is really hard. So like the one thing that is like the easiest to do and not to feel conflicted about is actual monetary support from the people who are the audience of the content that we make, rather than having to make moral compromises on where our money comes from when we get money at all, which is rare. So go support your favorite political journalists, political creators. We really need it right now because it's tough times, and the rebellion does need information to be able to make decisions.
Yeah. All that said, Lego, if you feel like sponsoring me, like I'm super down. I'll hustle anything for you. I am willing. I keep getting these comments that are like, "You're taking Soros money," and I was like, "If only they knew that I'm applying for a grant right now."
Dude, if sometimes people say that to me, and I'm like, dude, where are the billionaires that want to give me money? Why are they all? They just want me to promote AI, and I'm like, no. They actually, I didn't get reached out to about that, but I'm like, oh God, everything in the left space has no money. And then I hate asking people for money because I'm like, you're all getting fucked over by the same thing. And I'm like, can we, my thing is I always like, I'm like, can we just get 10% of the people who subscribe to the New York Times to unsubscribe from the New York Times and give it to independent journalism? Yeah. Like, that's like, can we get $200 million in circulation for like watchdog journalism instead of what I consider to be quite bad a lot of the time? There's a lot of good people that work at all these places, but it's so,
there's
that's my rant.
There was a conversation between like two right-wing creators, Lauren Southern and what's his name, Richard Hanania, where they were talking about like right-wing spaces, and they were saying like every single tweet you see on the right is paid for. Like there's so much money circulating for right-wing creators. And that's why the left gets accused of being funded by Soros, because they can't imagine, like especially the people who are familiar with how it works on the right, cannot imagine that the people on the left are doing this for free or like really struggling to scrape by making this kind of content. They like it has to be paid. They cannot imagine otherwise. All the protest paid for, like in their minds, when it's like, no, it's literally not. Like there's no money in anything that we're doing. We're like getting $500 a month from subscriptions and like trying to stretch that to as far as we can, which is not very far.
The paid agitator thing is so funny to me because I'm like, bro, all these people are broke as hell. Like, none of these people even have enough money to like give me $5 a month. Yeah, I'm like, the people who are getting paid are the right wing streamers who are coming in and filming all this to like 40,000 people and just like yelling slurs for super chats. Like it's insane.
Or there's like,
sorry, I'm dragging the conversation on.
Did you see the compilation?
When I have to explain it to politicians.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
Okay. Did you see the compilation of tweets after the attempted assassination with every right wing creator going, "This is why they need to build the ballroom." It was like that is not
they're literally in a
messaging.
Group chat together.
It's crazy.
We all know that that's what's happened. Yeah, it's crazy.
No, the line I give to politicians when I'm explaining like the asymmetry of these two, of like the left-right media sphere, or like it's not that like the left media sphere, it's literally anything that isn't the right media sphere. Especially like in Europe, it's like the liberals, the Greens, the socialists, the communists. No one's doing this. Nobody's doing this. But I was like saying, Ben Shapiro's one productions company gets $19 million a year. If I had $19 million, I could overthrow a country. Like that's the level of funding he gets, and that's just one show on his network getting that much money. And then look at Charlie Kirk's thing. He's like getting close to like almost 90 million in funding. Like, what could you do with that? It's crazy.
Oh.
And then you see
to be fair, Charlie Kirk is not getting anything anymore. But yeah, sorry, in bad taste.
Oh.
No, I'm a Charlie Kirk truther. Charlie Kirk never died. He's alive. That's my official position. You can put it.
Oh my god.
Anyway, crazy times.
Yeah.
We're definitely going to try to stream more often. I just need to find the energy and the time for that. There's a lot of cool stuff coming on Barely Informed. There's a lot of cool stuff that both of you have planned as well. So anyone watching, even if you're watching later on, subscribe to Hunter and Kevin, and I'll see you soon in a future stream or a future video. Bye.